We are super happy to have with us tonight Father Jack and Father Baker. Sometimes we'll get one of you, but it's not often we get both. So
We're here.
This is exciting. When it comes to Halloween, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things along the more spooky side of the faith. And I think fathers, these are questions that a lot of people ask pretty frequently, but they might be a little scared to ask them a little more openly. So how tonight's Q&A is going to work is we've got 15 minutes for just some rapid fire. I have some questions I've already given them, so they've had some time to prepare, get ready. But then after that, we'll open it up for 15 minutes of questions that you guys might have. So if you guys have any questions, you will have an opportunity to ask. But Father Jack, Father Baker, it's Halloween in 2 nights. So we're just going to ask, starting off just in general, what does the church think of Halloween? In terms of what extent should we participate in it? What's the stance on Halloween in terms of the church itself?
Go for it. You want to do this back and forth? So you take the first
Why don't you do first one?
Okay, is this on? Okay. Halloween is good. Halloween literally means All Hallows Eve. It's the older English way of saying the vigil before All Saints' Day. So literally the word, you could break it down and say Hallow, E''E''N. So they would say, instead of evening, they would say even. So that's literally where the word comes from. So it's the vigil of All Saints. That's what Halloween is. So we should not only practice it, but we should renew it. We should make Halloween great again. Or Halloween holy again. How about that? Because it has been distorted to something completely, nobody, even Catholics, don't know what it really means. So Halloween is good. Let's renew it by celebrating it well.
There will be candy handed out tomorrow night by Father Baker.
That's right. Come to the rectory if you
and
can
you
find
can see
it.
the saints we'll have the saints. We put saints out
Great.
on Halloween.
Yeah. Great. Let's move on to our next one. Fathers.
I defer to Father again because
horror
movies.
Should we watch them, or are there ones that we should avoid? What are some boundaries in terms of horror movies?
The scariness of the demonic and the scariness of just, the dangers of mortal life are things I think that are not only, not prohibited, but important to understand. And so putting that into literature and art and theater and then even movies, as we're modern people, can be done well. I don't have any examples off the top of my head. I probably should have, preparing for this. But so I think you can read about that, what the church is teaching and in our tradition, and then maybe there's some art forms that kind of express it and help you experience, okay, demonic is real, hell is real, mortal danger is real, and we need to have a healthy fear of that, just like you tell a young person not to go play in the road because there's a healthy fear. You get hit by a car, right? But by and large, today, for a long time now, horror movies are is a twisted way of enjoying or indulging or dismissing the danger of things. And then there's a lot of mockery of the Catholic faith because the Catholic faith is so important in this regard that there's a lot of mockery of God's truth and holiness in those movies as well. So I think there's a lot of things to make sure we avoid for sure, because it's not only not helpful, but it can be harmful or just offensive, to be involved in. But look for the good stuff. I think that'd be a good adventure to find the good stuff.
Is there any line that you can sort of define?
Yes, I think anything
enough?
that's just gratuitous violence, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, 7, 8.
Saw.
You've seen them all.
You should just avoid anything that's merely meant to. It's almost like it's pornography. It's violent pornography, and that is anything you take in. Your eyes are the window to your soul. Anything that you take in through your eyes are actually emblazoned upon your soul. And so things that are extremely violent, they get in your mind and in your heart, and they may desensitize you to what you should actually be sensitive to. And so the more you desensitize yourself to violence, it could be through video games, it could be horror films, the less sensitive you actually will be. You'll be ready to go join Hamas and go kill people, and you'll be sensitized to it. So it's very important you should use, basically for Halloween films, you use the same standards for any film. There's violence that's pornographic, and then there's lustful things that are pornographic. What are they doing? They're taking over your mind in such a way and emblazing it. When you have an image come in, it gets into your memory, and it shapes your mind, shapes the way you see reality. So I would be, if you're just doing it merely for curiosity or to be frightened, it's probably not a good motivation. You should be watching a film to be formed and informed. That should be true for any film. So there should be no gratuitous. Some people want to be frightened and scared. Actually, I don't know why, but I think psychologically the idea is if I can handle this and be frightened and scared, I'll be able to handle being frightened and scared in the future. Don't do that. It's not the way to be. Okay, so I, generally speaking, would discourage almost the entire genre at this point. I think probably the list of 5 we had up there would probably just not be appropriate.
Agreed.
So there you go.
Moving on to the more reality side of evil, in terms of demons, the best way I could phrase this question is, what's up with them? Like, what's up with demons? To what extent are they present in our everyday? Demons in general.
Demons are present. They are angels that are fallen. A third of the angels are fallen. The head of the demons is Lucifer or Satan. And once the demons have fallen, they're opposing God's will. So one of the differences between a holy angel and a demon, besides the fact that one's evil and one's good, is when you're doing God's will, all that holy angel is doing is obeying God. When you're a demon, you're attempting to do the opposite of what God would do, to destroy things. So God must give permission to a demon to do whatever he's going to do, and that permission is to bring a greater good out of things. He may permit you to be attacked. Do demons attack? Yes. What's the most common way to attack? There are basically these modes of attack. One is temptation. Can a demon actually project upon your imagination an image that would be tempting to you, having observed what you tend to be attracted to, whether for good or evil? Yes, he could. Okay, can a demon read your mind? No, he cannot. So you could have an image, if God permitted it, thrown onto your imagination that is an imaginative attack of a demon. You could become obsessed, actually spiritually, which would be a repeated, this is like in my head, I can't get it out of my head. That's obsession. You could be actually oppressed, which would be a physical type of manifestation where you feel or sense the presence of the demon in some way through an attack. Or the highest degree would be possession, wherein the demon enters through the person, usually through them entering into serious sin or making an invitation to a demon. You should not ever play tarot cards, Ouija boards, read palm reading. Any of this is an invitation to demons to actually, you give them an introduction, a portal. You're inviting them in. So remember, you have a guardian angel. The demon cannot get past your guardian angel if you empower your guardian angel to do so. You should remain in a state of grace so you're not vulnerable, okay? But the holy angels are more. The holy angels are doing God's will, and God is far more powerful than the demons. The question is, through sin or through actual invitation, do you invite the demons in? So they manifest themselves, they do actual things, and we should be careful of them, but we should not be terrified of them. The greatest thing they play off of is fear, okay? So we have greater power by God's grace. Stay in a state of grace. Pray to your guardian angel. Pray to St. Michael. Don't just be curious about occult things. Curiosity can be very dangerous. That's all I have to say about demons. Anything else, Father?
No, I think you said well.
Great. Exorcisms. When are they needed? Are they like we see in the movies?
Yeah, so I think Father made a good distinction for the question after that between possession and oppression.
Yep.
And then that helps with the understanding of exorcisms, which is only done, as we understand it, formal exorcisms are only done for actual possession. You can do what's known as minor exorcisms, which are really just prayers and blessings, just knowing that there's demons around and ask for God's power and healing. Priests can do those, and people can. The Our Father is a prayer of deliverance, because we say at the end, deliver us from evil. Exorcism is a person is actually possessed, and then a priest is coming in who is trained by the church, sent by his bishop, and there's a few priests in the diocese that the bishop has as exorcists, and they're trained fully. And then for a particular person who's been determined to be possessed, then the bishop will mandate, because the bishop has the full authority and the priests are co-working with him. So the bishop mandates that priest to go and cast out the demon or demons in that person through a formal exorcism of the church, formal ritual of exorcism, which can take a long time, multiple months or even years sometimes, to cast out the demons. The signs of possession there's nothing definitive, but in practice, there is really, you start to see a person abhor and hate holy things. So the priest will go and initially just start a long form prayer and start to wait to see a person react, which is really going to be the demons within them who can't stand holy things, especially our Lord and our Blessed Mother. But then some more definitive signs that have come up throughout the history and experience of exorcists is the most definitive one that can't be faked is a person is speaking a language they never studied, and often an ancient language like Latin or Hebrew Aramaic or something like that, or ancient Greek. And then other ones are going to be superhuman strength, where they're doing things that physically they shouldn't be able to do. Superhuman, supernatural things like levitation, which is extremely rare. And then there's another one that I came up with.
There's another one where they might know something about you that they shouldn't know.
Right, exactly.
So they would have secret knowledge because, for example, God might permit them to observe you doing something evil, and then they would be able to say something, and you would realize it's something that no one should know.
Right.
Would be known.
But in general, in the end, those are just kind of classic signs that have kind of risen up through exorcisms. Exorcisms are done in a very humble way by the priest, and just in a formal way where the priest is a strongly trained, prayerful man who is all about staying out of the way and just doing the church's work so that God can work through him. And people who are possessed, it's extremely rare. They'll evaluate the person for mental illness first. That's a very thorough psychological evaluation, because 99.9% of the time when people come to the church and think they have possession, it's some sort of psychological illness. Now, I think we need to understand all the other various levels of spiritual illness and address those as priests, as people of God. But exorcism itself for a real possession is extremely rare. And even in that case, as Father said, there's some reason that the Lord has allowed it to bring out good from it. And I actually know someone who was possessed with a couple of demons. It actually happened through the vicarious stewardship of the soul that happens when the child is baptized before they reach the age of reason. Parents and godparents have a vicarious authority over that person's soul before they can decide for themselves. And at that point, I think her godfather was a Mason at a high level and maybe practiced some sort of occult practice and invited demons into her soul. And years later, she discovered this, and it took a long time to actually exorcise those demons. But she lived kind of a normal life. She would have these manifestations of the possession, the infestation, and as the church was there to start doing the exorcisms, they worked on it, and it was very difficult for her, but it's almost like an illness, going to a doctor, knowing you got this illness, and they just work on it little by little.
Yeah.
And when somebody's possessed, very often what happens is it's like them blacking out. The demon actually manifests itself through the person, and their will still exists. They're not doing it. The demon is availing themselves by entering into the body of all the movements of the body and so forth. The person themselves often doesn't have any awareness or remembrance of what actually happened. So the demon will work through the person, and you're able to perceive, okay, wait a minute, this isn't, the person wouldn't know this language, the person wouldn't have this strength, the person wouldn't be able to do these specific things. So it manifests itself. So what the priest is typically doing is, through the prayers and stuff, he will draw forth the demon, and he's going to try to get the demon to name himself. So, for example, one time a demon manifested itself, and he got the demon to name itself as Thomas. And he said, "Oh, Thomas Aquinas." And the demon said, "No, you idiot. Thomas a Becket," okay? And it had been a demon who had actually possessed the man to kill St. Thomas à Becket. And the way it came forth was through a relic of Thomas à Becket. It manifested itself. And this same demon had been trying to drive somebody to commit murder. Okay, so I really suspect that a lot of the murders that we see occurring involve probably possession, where somebody is now used as an instrument through inviting, through their actions, and through what they've been doing is so deep and evil that the devil eventually finds an entry point and uses the person to cause these types of things.
Yeah, and we'll jump ahead a little bit. You guys have used the word the occult a couple times. What is the occult? And why shouldn't we participate in those things as Catholics? And if we know someone who has participated, maybe we have, or we know of someone, or maybe ourselves are in possession of items like these, what should we do?
Could I
Please,
start with that
Father,
one?
yeah, please.
So before I became a priest, the last girl I dated read tarot cards, and she read my tarot. So after she dumped me, I mean, who can imagine such a thing actually happened?
She must have been possessed.
But after she did, yes, she must have been possessed. But anyway, I was a pseudo-sophisticated, very poorly catechized Catholic, and once I actually was called by God to become a priest, I went to seminary, and one night when I was in bed sleeping, I had this horrible, dark nightmare, and in the nightmare, I actually saw this girl that I used to date, and she had tarot cards in her hand, and she was holding them like this, and the cards were stacked on one side and flipped over to the other side. She's standing right in front of me, and I see them flip over, and while I'm dreaming, I can feel this blackness just close in on me, and when I wake up, I'm not breathing, and then when I finally caught my breath, I realized, oh, tarot cards. I guess I'm not supposed to be involved with it. So since then, tarot cards, Ouija boards, I've had not many, but I've had at least a few experiences with Ouija boards where somebody wants to communicate with a grandparent who died. And they get the Ouija board, and it's not the grandparent that shows up. It's the devil that shows up. It causes all different kinds of problems in the room. They come and get me as a priest to go over to their house, even if they haven't been practicing their faith. So if God permitted me to be attacked by a demon to remind me not to mess with tarot cards, he had a good reason. I woke up. I was very scared. I went and prayed before the Blessed Sacrament. Never had another visitation again. Okay? In the case of the person with the Ouija boards, I come over to the house. I get the Ouija board. I do a special blessing of the house. There's no problem afterwards. God allows the manifestation to help us realize there are demons and there are angels. Okay? And the church has the power to bind and loose. Okay, and has the power to bind those and get those out of the way. Okay, so I was much more frightened of scary movies and everything before I was a priest than afterwards. It's not to say I'm not. I give the devil his due and respect him, but I realize the power that God has over it. I've seen it manifest. Okay, if there's a ghost at a house, if there's a demon at a house, they call a priest. I have no power myself. I understand that. I go to the house, I do what the church does, and the problem's solved, okay? And I think that's what you need to have confidence in. You have the power to stay in grace, and you have the protection of Mother Church. Father, what else?
Yeah, I think that those are the main points. Like we're kind of giving you little insights into kind of these things that happen in kind of rare circumstances in people's lives and the church and the history. I think, like Father says, there's probably a lot of darkness and evil out there with demonic activity that's happening much more broadly, and that a lot of people think, oh, it's just psychological, it's just social, it's just emotional, it's just human, but probably not. But what do you walk away from this evening thinking about? Oh, no, I got to fight all the demons? No, it's just a matter of following the church's teaching as our mother and staying away from these things, realizing that the spiritual reality is real, both the good spirit of God and all of his angels and the evil spirits who are fighting the war. The celestial war is real, and we're kind of caught in the crossfire, so to speak, really very much. So just stay humble and realize, okay, this is real, so I need to avoid these things. You know, the church affirmed that investigated the Ouija board and saw that this was actual demonic activity in some of these cases, you know. The other cases, okay, the kids are pushing it and trying to make it seem like it's something going on, but it actually was an avenue for that, you know. When I was a brand new priest, 2 kids from the local Protestant church up the road came to our door in our office and was sitting in my office because this young boy's friend, he was 15, she had been having night terrors. She went to a fortune teller, a medium, and the medium said, "Oh, you have that talent that I have. You need to practice it." And then she started being attacked every night with these demonic attacks. So this stuff is real, but it's not going to get you if you don't want it to. So that's the real walkway message. You just stay humble, strive for holiness. The church has all the power. God has given the church all the power to protect us, and to not just protect us and stay away from this danger, but to live a full, rich life of holiness and power.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do one quick one, and then we'll let our teens ask any questions. We've mentioned a lot about demons, exorcisms, but you touched briefly on ghosts. I think that's one that is a little more common in terms of understanding. But is there a purpose for ghosts? How are they handled typically?
So ghosts can be several different things. It can be, in general, a good spirit, an angel, a demonic spirit, or a human soul that's been allowed to interact with you. And that's usually something that's not meant to disturb you, but usually that's going to be a soul from heaven, or a soul in purgatory, or even a soul from hell that's been allowed to warn you, But it's not like a demon. If somebody's in hell, a human soul's in hell, they don't have the power to come and do what they want, and like the demons can a lot of times. So those realities are real. They're rare, but the interesting thing is like human persons. Now you can go and with an occult manner actually conjure up communication with the human soul who's in purgatory or even in hell, and that's using the power of demons, right? But in a lot of cases, like that has happened, where it's been documented and the church has affirmed that this is real. It's because the person's in purgatory and they need prayers. So they're allowed to interact with people so that we remember to pray for the dead, right? But then obviously if it's a good angel, there's a good reason for it, and we see that recorded in Scripture. And if it's a demon, then we should be praying in a holy, disciplined way anyway to be able to turn away from that and be protected from it.
Yeah.
And I think basically the occult is you wanting to access something God does not want you to access now. So the invisible realm of demons, he actually doesn't want you to see that, okay? Why? Because it would terrify the living daylights out of you, okay? But then also the future. The future is God's. The present, what he's given you. The past is what you give to his mercy. He doesn't. Astrology, a lot of these things are trying to manipulate life in a way that God does not want you to manipulate it. He says the future, you're going to find out what that is if you obey me, what your future is. It's a good future. If you disobey me, it's a bad future. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know more than that. And so God gives us what we need to know. He's even told us what the future is in his broad strokes, but not in its specific application. That's found through obedience. So the occult is always about trying to access a type of information that God actually wants to withhold from us for now, for our benefit, and given our limitations.
Yeah, thank you. We'll move to questions now. If anyone has any, I'll give one just quick aside on it. I know the temptation is oftentimes in these Q&As and such to ask something that might be funny, that'll get a good laugh out of the room, but we'll try to avoid those questions. We'll try to keep it to any questions that are actually serious, something that you're wondering from both of our fathers here.
An exorcist must be an ordained priest of Jesus Christ, which is reserved to men, has always been. And so there are often, with an exorcist, he has a team of people who are praying. And that can involve lay people, in fact, and religious sisters or whatever. They aren't usually with him in the exorcism ritual. Sometimes they can be. A person who's not a priest can be there assisting the priest with prayer, literally praying the rosary while the priest is doing the ritual, so that can be a situation.
Also, saints could be so holy that they could drive out a demon. Oh, yeah. Okay, so, but it's not, strictly speaking, it's not a formal exorcism. Yeah. So when you call somebody an exorcist, that specifically applies to a priest delegated by the bishop, as Father said.
Yeah.
Demons are angels. When you use the Ouija board, it's going to be a one size. It's all going to be demons.
Yeah.
They're not going to be holy angels. Don't come through Ouija boards. Holy angels come through prayer. Okay, so we have to remember. I say St. Michael's prayer. I say, your angel's there. Okay, so I think the difference between magic, the occult, is manipulation. It's always diminishing. You always lose something. With God, you're always gaining. Okay, and it's prayer. We have means of accessing the invisible, but the invisible manifests itself in different ways to us through the holiness, through prayer. So, but that's why we have prayer. That's why we have sacramentals. That's why we have. This is a way to access the actual saints, angels, and God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay.
And in general, you have your guardian angel. You can talk to your guardian angel all the time. You should. I kind of have recently, in recent years, learned to do that more. And you can, in prayer, when you're praying, asking God for different graces and helps. Every now and then I found myself saying, can I have an apparition from our Blessed Mother, or some angelic apparition just to help me? But I have that passing thing. I send it up to the Lord and I move on. I don't get obsessed with it. It's all to Father's point. When we try and obsess over something, even if it's like a good angelic, interaction or apparition, we get lost. Like a lot of people hear about Mary appearing at a certain place and these different miracles that the church has approved, and then they go and do pilgrimages and they read and they talk about it all the time as like their only thing that they do with faith, because they're chasing after some special little miracle. And that isn't healthy. They're not looking for demonic stuff. They're not doing demonic things like tarot cards and Ouija boards, but it's still a very unhealthy thing because their will is the most important thing that they're trying to exercise, as opposed to humbly waiting for God and trusting that He's giving us crazy graces we can't even imagine, amazing, beautiful things.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, very good. She's
Yeah.
reading her scripture. So yeah, Job, basically this devil's roaming around the world and goes over to Jesus. He says, look, he's only this way because you gave him all this stuff. He says, go ahead and take it away. Okay. But what God's granting permission, and you see the demon has to get, why? Because demons are opposing God's will. They must ask permission. Holy angels are doing God's will. They're just doing it. They don't go around and ask permission. They're just doing God's will. So we see that's I think that's, for me, it's always been helpful to realize that demons, the way they relate to God, they're still existent. They can still carry out deeds. God only permits it to happen if a greater good is going to come out of it, okay? So I can see in the cases where, like, I've had people who've had serious infestation or come. Why? They come to a Catholic priest. They may not be Catholic at all. They begin to investigate what Catholicism is, and they begin to see the wisdom of Mother Church. So in these types of cases, I can see just by the movement towards the church, they never would have darkened the doorsteps of a Catholic campus or church property unless because even Protestants and Jews, and they all understand, where do you go when you got demons? You go to the Catholic Church. I mean, we're the real Ghostbusters, as it were, or at least the demon busters, right?
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, Lily. That we should avoid? Yeah, any
I think
other?
Father's suggestion was pretty much all of them these days in terms of horror movies and stuff. Most horror movies also really do mock the faith. And they have, because that's the most punchy, entertaining thing, I guess, for people.
And there have been ones in the past that lean more into the realism.
Yeah.
So there's
The
a couple.
Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're
Acting
telling the true
historically,
story.
yes.
In terms of
I went to
those
see The
ones-
Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now,
Okay.
the thing is, though, I could see that as a priest, and I'm okay. I think it's really hard to see that. When I was a parishioner, I would have been terrified if
Yeah.
I'd seen the.
Just lack of knowing what's going on.
Well, and also in this, I'm not going to tell you the story actually, because I think it's very frightening.
Yeah.
But it was true in the sense of what that possibility is. So
It'd be like, how comfortable would you be walking into an operating room and watching a doctor do an open heart surgery or heart transplant? You'd probably faint from queasiness, right? Whereas the doctor's cool and calm and knows exactly what's going on. And this is a good thing. So, it's about being humble again and not chasing after these things.
Sure.
And movies are the perfect medium to get us obsessed about things that even if, oh, I'm just looking for the good stuff, well, it's not healthy. It's imbalanced. It's not the Lord's will, you
Yeah.
know.
I think I've heard good reviews of Nefarious.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I've heard it reviewed by an exorcist actually, and I think because it actually shows you how the demon operates. Okay, so in Nefarious, you can see a person in it's a
It's
fictional
almost like
thing,
a screw tape
but yeah, where you begin to see, okay, this is how it's not so bad to figure out how the devil's operating.
Yeah.
Only so you can say, oh, wait a minute, that's not of God. Okay, okay, so I think there are some cases where you can see
Yeah, yeah.
things
Sure.
like this.
Informing oneself over time is
Yes.
prudent, yeah.
Sure. We'll take one more. I saw
Who's
JD.
the young man over there?
I
Yeah.
saw JD's hand in the back.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the main classical things, again, signs for an exorcist are not really the way that possession is determined and an exorcism is then authorized. But over time, over history, certain signs have shown up. The most unfakeable sign is a person starts speaking in a language they didn't study, couldn't have studied, ancient language that isn't even spoken anymore. That's clear, you know. And you got experts who come in who've studied that language and say, well, that's actually the language. They're actually saying things. Levitation is extremely rare, or other supernatural things. It has happened, and it's usually sometimes a moment when the devil is showing off or trying to scare the priest. So that's been
It
depicted
can move.
in movies as well.
Objects can be moved.
Right.
A person who's a regular person could suddenly appear like a serpent and
But
manifest itself in that way.
But we're talking about extremely rare things inside of an extremely rare event itself of possession, you know. So it's kind of like an intrigue.
But common
curiosity
enough
thing.
to where your average priest knows at least 4 or 5 people who've had these experiences.
Fair enough, yeah, and kind of to that point about the amount of demonic stuff going on around us, just to be prudent and have a healthy fear of it, is probably a lot more than we do realize. Yeah, with all the evil we see out there and the sins,
Sure.
how much spiritual demonic activity is going on, probably
Sure.
a lot more than we realize. Yeah.
And I've seen when people who tended, at the ones who share with me actual events, what's so wonderful is to see how that led them to a very deep Catholicism and a very rich Catholicism. So with the actual, I can see manifest God bringing greater good out of the evil when people's seen people who are kind of living in a half-baked lifestyle in a big city, and all of a sudden they see manifestations, and they move to the church, and they do more. I want to get with the Blessed Sacrament. I want to meet holy people. I want to marry a holy wife. There's different decisions that are made, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. If there's any more questions, we'll have both of our priests. Is it a quick one?
yeah,
Kind of. That's not an answer.
bad faces.
Cases.
Any bad cases of
Any bad cases?
possession? or-
I have, not that I'm aware of, seen possession, but I've seen very serious manifestations of infestation, where and sometimes I've referred people that I suspected of possession to a deliverance ministry that exists in our diocese. So
Sure.
I've seen actual manifestations from individuals. I don't want to go into details on probably 3 or 4 occasions where I'm going like, this is definitely a manifestation of a demon. It doesn't mean possession necessarily, but it is a manifestation, and it's
Sure.
pretty clear, right? So I've seen it on a couple occasions.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, as a priest, it's just something you see, you're aware of, but like if I'm walking and I'm carrying Jesus in a host, I'm like, dude, why are you hurting yourself? You know, I'm not worried in that particular
Yeah,
case.
good
right?
luck.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've seen some really dark stuff that I suspect, or I'm pretty sure in my own kind of certainty, moral certainty, that it's really a demonic activity. Not necessarily, I don't think I've seen possession, but I'm not really sure. But people who are, you know, I've given counsel to who are struggling, maybe in the confessional, and they're struggling in a very deep, heavy way, like a lot of people are, but there's something so powerful that is really weighing them down that it's like you're talking to them and reasoning with them, and they're trying to engage you, but there's something more powerful there that's
Yep.
really weighing them down. So that's where you start to sense the spiritual activity.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. If you have any further questions, the question box that we always have,
Yes.
I'm going to try to get both of our priests to answer those questions this week if we cross paths in the office. So if you ask any questions there, if there were any that you didn't want to ask out loud, or if you have any questions later on tonight, just feel free to write those down, and we'll get some answers for
And
you
be
guys.
not afraid.
not
Main
afraid.
thing is you got the protection of God. Love God. Tell Him. And if you've ever fall in a serious way sinfully, just kneel down, say an act of contrition, tell God you love Him, ask Him for His love and protection, and God's going to help you. Okay,
Great.
so just make sure you just stay under the protection of the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ. Anything else, Father?
Amen to that.
Amen.
Thank
Okay,
you very
thank
much.
you.